Alright, guys, we are back here on the show to talk about last night's game and a pretty interesting matchup between the Packers and the Seattle Seahawks just because of obviously some more playoff implications and talking about seedings and division winners and things like that. It was no different in this game. And, Sunday Night Football concluded with even more, just craziness in the NFC, really, in terms of the playoff picture because Green Bay went into Seattle and came away with a win. The final score was 30-13, but the Packers, not really playing for, too much like movement or divisions or anything like that because I don't think the Lions or even the Vikings are not going to win the division. So the Packers are 10-4 now. So they're still 2 games behind those two teams. So if they continue like they are, they're probably locked into the number 5 seed anyway. But they did recover from the loss to the Lions, right? Because of how harsh it was and how, hard done they probably felt, losing by 3 points, probably feeling that they probably could have won that game. They were able to go on the road again and beat a very game Seattle Seahawks team. Again, for the Packers that weren't really playing for too much, but that's not really the story for the Seahawks because they had a lot really on the line and on their play in this game because a win would have been huge. It would have kept, their lead over the Rams in the division and would have kept the Seahawks as the leaders of the NFC West. But now, because of the loss, the Seahawks are now tied with the Los Angeles Rams with the same exact record at 8-6. But what's so important about that is that right now, if the season ended today, the regular season ended today, the Seahawks with the same exact record as the Rams at 8-6, the Seahawks would be out of the playoffs because the Rams beat them the first time around, and that is the tiebreaker right now. So the Rams, as we speak, right now currently, are the number 1 team in the NFC West. They are the number 4 seed as of right now, and the Seahawks find themselves as the number 8 team, 1 spot out of the playoffs. So they went from the number 3 to number 4 seed to completely out of the playoffs now with the loss. So nothing's done or set yet, obviously, because they have the same record. But it is very disappointing for the Seahawks because they were on a 4-game win streak. They were feeling good. Their offense was playing better. The turnovers were really limited, and their defense was creating turnovers, bringing pressure and things like that. And it was looking very impressive. But in this game, I thought that you really saw kind of like the difference between some of the real contending teams and some of the teams that can give you a fight but might not just be there yet. And I think the Packers made that distinction with their win, kind of putting them with the Eagles and the Vikings and the Lions, I would say, whereas the Seahawks are still like a team with the Buccaneers or the Rams or even the Washington Commanders, right? Not bad teams. It's not a huge like difference in play, but the teams that are able to get these close wins, I think that's really where the distinction lies. And the Seahawks unfortunately weren't able to get that last night, but even though that's all, pretty bad for the Seahawks to kind of lose the number 1 spot right now, it's not the biggest concern because the Seahawks also did not finish yesterday's game with their quarterback Geno Smith. He left in the third quarter with about 7 minutes left in that third quarter after a right knee injury. It was kind of weird where the Packers player, I'm pretty sure it was Ajarian Cooper, who kind of went low on Geno to tackle him, and his knee kind of got caught up in the turf, kind of in a weird maneuver, and he was holding it a little bit. He was hobbling. He was obviously frustrated on the sideline, and he wasn't able to come back. So that's still a huge concern, right? Because of all the talk about the NFC West and trying to be, the number 1 team and get into the playoffs, none of that really matters if Geno's not playing. If we know that Geno's not going to play the rest of the year, the rest of the worries and concerns don't really matter because they're not gonna make the playoffs without Geno playing. And I thought that was pretty clear yesterday with the way Sam Howell played. And I don't want to dump on him too much, but you can tell why Geno's obviously playing and why they have a much better chance of playing better and going somewhere this year because of the fact that Geno has been playing pretty well, and Sam Howell, just kind of got tossed in. But it's definitely the biggest concern as of right now, based on that. So I'm gonna try and see if there was any more developments on the Geno injury. As of right now, I'm not seeing anything. I know he's supposed to have like an MRI or some scans today, but I'm not seeing anything more recently on him. I'm sure it'll come out, if not later tonight or potentially tomorrow. So that's obviously a concern. You don't want it to be a long-term thing, but head coach Mike McDonald said that the structural look of the knee looked to be pretty intact. So that's some positive news. But in this game, when Geno got hurt, the score was already 20-3 in favor of Green Bay. So once Geno got hurt and you knew that he wasn't coming back, the game was pretty much just a wash away at that point. Mostly because of how the Packers were playing, basically, but still without no Geno, it was always going to be tougher. And this win was actually the Packers' first win in Seattle since 2008. Still. With that win, they still sit as the number 6 seed as of right now, not the 5th seed. Like I said before, the 5th seed is the Vikings right now. The Packers would probably be locked into the 6th seed if I were to guess as of right now. But going through this game a little bit more, it was really a lot to do with just how well the Packers played. I want to say again, because the Packers scored quickly and often, in this game. They scored on their first 2 drives. Seattle got back on the board with their second drive of the game once they kicked the field goal to make it 14-3. But then Green Bay added those 2 other field goals, like I said, and then it went into halftime. And at one point, actually before halftime, Seattle had a really good drive going, a very methodical 12-play, 63-yard drive going into the half, right? But once they got into the red zone, unfortunately, we talked about those turnover problems and how the Seahawks had really cut down on them. Well, they popped up yet again where Geno threw an interception in the end zone during that drive, and they went into halftime 20-3 instead of 20-6 or 20-10. Because of that interception, they came away with nothing, and that was pretty demoralizing, I thought, going into halftime. And then to start the second half, it was mostly just a back and forth, both of the teams punting the ball away. And then after both teams exchanged a field goal, Josh Jacobs actually fumbled to start the fourth quarter, right? So with that, the score was 23-6 at that point when Jacobs fumbled. And then Seattle scored another touchdown with Geno Smith obviously out of the game at this point. So now it's a 10-point game, and Seattle forced, another turnover on downs. So it's still a 10-point game. They got the fumble recovery and then a turnover on downs. I'm still not confident, but at least it's something. But my optimism pretty much died there because Sam Howell threw an interception to Ejarian Cooper about 2 to 3 plays after they got the ball back, and at that point, Green Bay scored one more time, and then the score was 30-13, and that would turn out to be the final score. And first, on the side of the Green Bay Packers, I want to say just overall, this is the 4th game in a row that Jordan Love has not thrown, any turnovers, no fumbles, no bad interceptions or anything like that. And, that's great from, his standpoint, obviously, but also I thought the running game continued to, really be the driving force for this offense, right? And specifically, Josh Jacobs, obviously. He's scored for the 5th game in a row now. And I think really everything they do sort of in a way is just played off of how he's doing, or just, is another step off of what he's doing, right? Once the running game gets going, now they're able to open up a lot more passing lanes, getting a bit more creative with the passing game, and then they build on the runs that they have, right? They build on the kind of runs that they scheme up. They keep it fresh. They don't always, run the same outside zone or inside zone or just power, don't just have a power running game. It's very varied, and they do a good job of, kind of mixing it up with Josh Jacobs or Eric Wilson coming in, and then just like I said, after that, the play action's able to get going, and the passing lanes are a bit more open for Jordan Love. So I thought the way that they've really shifted the focus to Josh Jacobs and the running game as the first priority, and then, kind of getting Jordan Love involved, I thought it's worked wonders for them now, obviously, going forward. And it's a little bit like Philadelphia because of the threat of the running game and how efficient it is. They have all the pass catching options like Philadelphia does with Jaden Reed and Christian Watson and Dontavius Wicks is the other receiver. Tucker Kraft, their tight end as well. And Romeo Doubs. They have a bunch of options like the Eagles do. Maybe not the same level as AJ, but they got 4 to 5 pass catching options that are very dependable for them, on top of a great running game like Saquon in Philly. The Packers have it with Josh Jacobs as well. So, it's those type of teams that really are benefiting from the health and obviously playing better at this point of the year. But on Seattle, the last thing we'll say about them is, that the injury is definitely a concern. I'm still sticking to the fact that if Geno's not playing, this team's unfortunately probably closer to done than anything else. And it stinks because it feels like you're taking away their opportunity, right, to compete. But it's, the injury bug, and the fact that injuries, derail everything, right? It always feels unfair. It always feels like it comes at the wrong point of the season. But, it is what it is. Based on that, there's going to be more information coming out on Geno's injury. But even with Geno, the rest of these games were going to be brutal. So that's kind of, fanning my concern for the Seahawks if they don't have Geno Smith. Because even with him playing, they still had to play Minnesota at home, at Chicago, and then finish the year in Los Angeles. And those games were already going to be tough with everybody healthy. And now without Geno, I'm not believing Sam Howell's going to win 2 out of the next 3 games. I'm just not believing it. So, a very rough afternoon, very rough night for the Seahawks, losing their winning streak and finding themselves out of the playoffs right now as things stand. But that was all yesterday's action that we're going to get to. Now we're looking ahead to the 2 Monday Night Football games that we have coming up. The first one is actually in less than an hour at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the one that we are going to talk about first, with Chicago taking on the Vikings for the second time this year. That segment is coming up right after this break.